The other video about Florence goes into what's around this piazza, but this one goes inside some of those places mentioned. The Baptistery actually sits in the middle of a couple of piazzas, not just one. The Baptistery is one of the oldest buildings in the city. It was constructed between 1059 and 1128 in the Florentine Romanesque style. These 3D bronze doors show the scenes from the life of Christ, and they are replicas, not the originals. They also show scenes of the life of John the Baptist. It was long believed that the Baptistery was originally a Roman temple dedicated to Mars. However, the 12th century excavation have shown that there was a 1st century Roman wall running through the piazza into the Baptistery, so it actually might be the remains of a Roman guard tower. Regardless of what came before it, it's pretty certain that a first octagonal baptistry was erected here in the late 4th or 5th century, and then it was replaced or altered by another early Christian baptistry in the 6th century, maintaining the same shape. Basically, you stand in the middle of this and go turn around 360 and kind of look up and look down, and you pretty much get a picture of everything that's going on. What amazes me the most is that whoever does this work manages to create such big drawings and paintings, and yet manages to maintain proportions and deal with angles and curves. The Florence Cathedral was begun in 1296 in the Gothic style and was completed structurally in 1436. It's had many renovations as each Medici wanted to leave their own mark, making it a little bigger and a little bigger. Fortunately, they didn't dispose of these sculptures and artwork as they did the renovations. They actually are still around in the Duomo museums. What makes this center cathedral a little confusing is it seems to be constructed over a second cathedral, which was an early Christian cathedral called Saint Reparata, and that one may have been built over a previous temple. And to tell you the truth, I can't tell where one begins and one ends, so it's just best to go see it. It's just worth the trip. One of the other churches that's sort of enclosed in all this is the Santa Maria del Fiore, and this was the 3rd largest church in the world after St. Peter's in Rome and St. Paul's in London, and it was the largest church in Europe when it was completed in the 15th century, and it was dedicated to Santa Maria del Fiore, the Virgin of the Flower, in 1412, and it's sort of a clear allusion to the lily, which is the symbol of the city of Florence. But again, I can't tell where one of these begins and one ends. There are multiple entrances here. You'll see that outside this cathedral, one side looks very dark and the other side looks a lot lighter. That's not shadows, that's grunge from years of pollution. They've only finished, at least at the time that I was there, half of the building. So that's not shadow, that's just dirt. I know that after a while, all the interiors of these churches and cathedrals and basilicas begin to all look alike, but it's still hard to not go inside because even though they're laid out all the same, because the Pope uses his guidelines and they have to build that way. So many feet this way, so many feet that way. The altar goes here, but not there. But it's more of the artwork that becomes the main draw, because some of these pieces are done by the masters, even before they were the masters. And now we go down to the crypt. While doing some renovations and research work under the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore, they discovered a whole other basilica underneath. And this is part of why I say it's kind of confusing on what's on top of what. But this is the most tangible evidence of early Christianity in Florence. The Santa Reparata was one of the early major Christian complexes in the whole region of Tuscany. And it's an important, accentuated by its position, because it's directly in front of the Baptistery and actually closer to the Baptistery than the current cathedrals. There's tombs of popes here, and some of the Medicis and bishops, and Brunelleschi's buried here also. You can see all kinds of different Roman periods here. You got the Roman period from 1 to 4 BC, the Christian era from 4 to 7, then the early medieval period from 8 to 10, and then the Romanesque period from 11 to 14. As well as tombs, there are Roman arches, mosaics, frescoes. You can retrace the basilica's 1600-year history from down here. There are relics in well-preserved condition. History tells us that the original basilica was constructed between the 4th and 5th century, comprising an area of approximately 35% of today's Duomo. Once you get down into these subterranean levels and look around, you get a sense of the layout of the original church. Even the stairs that you come down in actually used to go up to a choir level. It's spooky, but in a good sort of way. And you look here and you say, I can't believe that those columns are holding up this huge building. Then when you are done, you go upstairs, let your eyes get accustomed to the light, go see the rest of the city.